All right, we're streaming again. Yep,
All
sorry
right.
about that. Sorry about that, everyone. I'm pretty sure the hurricane is disrupting my internet. I'm on a secondary connection, so don't be surprised if things start being a little funny again. Could happen at any moment, but we'll press on and we'll do whatever it takes to get this done.
I do find it a little bit strange that his internet got fucked off right when I mentioned the you know what, but
Well, of course, don't you know that hurricanes are another creation of the government? Like
no,
Kraken, like AIDS?
I'm not saying that the hurricane is controlled by the government. I'm saying that the moment I mentioned the thing that nobody else
Thing
is
of which
talking
shall not be mentioned, but will be talked about.
yeah, the thing that no one else has talked about that I found and have been spreading around Discord that's gonna fucking blow shit up once we drop it.
Oh, right,
Uh,
the thing. Yes, the thing of the place in the guy in
John
1989.
Carpenter's
well,
thing.
anyway, we already talked about
Tunnels.
the first story, which was in case you weren't watching the stream when before his internet went out. There was a tunnel that was discovered when a DC insider's house burned down that had been used recently, and it appears to have been hand dug, and people are suspecting it might have something to do with human trafficking.
Again, we
But
can't
that's
prove anything, but it's not impossible. We're not ruling it out.
well, the thing that I was gonna say is that you'll notice that in the upper echelons of society, whether it's the political establishment or the media establishment, there seems to be a very strong correlation between that and pedophile sex trafficking.
Well, of course, the worst people are the ones who pick up power.
And, well, no, it's not just that. I think that there's a very specific reason for why that is. And the why is because these are not only areas where politicians go in to be blackmailed so that if they do something wrong, they can other figures can hold the fact they went to a pedophile organization above their head. That's something that people have said, but the problem with that is that I don't think that a normal person would go to a pedophile sex party to begin with.
No.
Um, my theory is I actually have a an explanation for this, which is documented in well documented human science. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling for words here, but yeah, there is a psychological trait that happens in humans, psychological effect where if someone goes through enough psychological abuse, they develop a state of dependence. I'm not talking about Stockholm syndrome, but there have been there have been studies done on monkeys where they set up like three different puppets. One of them is just sort of there. It's very soft. The other has a trigger where if the monkey gets close to it, it'll blow a gust at it to push it back. And in every example, the monkey becomes more attached to the one which pushes it away and is rejecting it, and which to an early developing human child, a toddler, when people are still in the stage of development where they're dependent on their parents and they actually that is actually a crucial aspect of their psychology. So they that could be a very damaging thing for them. They become even more attached. So I think that the purpose of these pedophile sex trafficking rings is to essentially groom future figures in the media and politics and make them dependent on the establishment.
Well, here's a little statistic on it.
I'd have to
Every
look
year,
up
300,000. I have some stats. 300,000 children in the USA are prostituted, and the industry is worth $150 billion a year in 2014. And the 300,000 is just in the United States, 2 million worldwide.
2 billion worldwide. Yeah, that's pretty scary.
A year.
Most of it happens over in like Saudi Arabia or whatever. But the point,
300,000 in America.
Yeah, that's just what we know too.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
Probably way more.
It's
I don't even want to know the true numbers. I just want it to end. Like, these people literally just need to, like, be helicoptered, gulagged, something.
we
Well,
thought
you gotta get rid of the state. You got to permanently decentralize all means of association in order for that to happen. You got to take away the incentive that these power-hungry psychopaths have to do this to people.
I mean, it's worth noting that you have the examples that Aristotle provided of all 4 forms of government that will necessarily degenerate into some form of tyranny. I think it's more prudent to say that every form of government, without exception, will always devolve into a kakistocracy. When you have the power that people will be able to live at the expense of someone else against their will, is that going to attract the best, the brightest, the most noble and virtuous of society? Of course not. You're going to attract the cleverest among the trash, the gutters, the demagogues, the monsters, the general sociopaths. That's who's going to get into power. And when they have the ability to do whatever they want without reprisal, you end up with things like Jeffrey Epstein's little island paradise.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's that complicated. I think that it's the occupation of a politician itself. Just like any other kind of salesman, a politician, they test for things that boost their approval ratings and make people more dependent on the government, which gets more people involved. What are the things that boost approval ratings the most? Well, of course, increasing the welfare state, expanding the military-industrial complex and our influence over the world. And these are all things which incentivize politicians to expand the government.
Yep.
You just simply won't, because that's what a politician does. A politician by occupation. You think that they go in there because they're trying to serve you? No, they're not. They go in there to try. They go in there to try and boost their approval ratings. Because for politicians, that's like what gets them brand recognition. That's essentially that gets them more power in higher places after they're out of office and after they've done things. It essentially gives them more power behind their name.
And these people do any scummy thing and work with any scummy person to fund their campaign trail every 4 years. And
this is never going to escape it. I mean, I was talking with someone today, and they said that we need a reset. Not really a reset, but just abandon the government and start over. And I had a hard time pressing them, just like, start over and do what exactly? Because well, they're kind of a minarchist, so I'm a little skeptical.
The United States is an example of abandoning it and starting over, and now we're even worse off than where we were.
Pretty much.
Back when we were colonies.
Minarchist or statist, and from one minarchy comes more authoritarian. It never goes the opposite way.
It didn't even take long for the U.S., which is the best experiment of minarchism in the world, to go tyrannical. How long until
the very moment that the government formed, the first thing they did was start putting taxes on alcohol because they thought it was a luxury tax and it wouldn't affect
As
them.
well as the Sedition Act.
Yeah,
This-
oh shit, now you've got these farmers and these brewers who are hurt by this that aren't very rich people. So what do you get? You get the Whiskey Rebellion, 1793, I think that was.
Yeah.
I think it was 1791, but yeah, or 1792, basically around there. The Alien Sedition Acts actually came like 8 years after. But I mean,
Yeah.
like if the best you can hope for is, or from a minarchist government is 8 years, then you really have to double check your motives.
I thought it was 6 months.
Well,
Let's just be nice and give them 10 years. We'll be nice.
There you
Even if
go.
it lasts 10 years, that'd be a pain to reset every 10 years.
I mean,
Literally.
what's the point if you're just going to reset it every 10 years?
Let's,
I mean,
what I'm saying is you can't, it's not possible to sustain a minarchist government. Doesn't matter how hard you try, it's not going to work because the purpose of government and the occupation of a politician is to expand the government and give themselves power at the direct expense of everyone else.
Yeah.
and I'm sorry, but there's not going to be a way to avoid that. It doesn't matter if they're democratically elected or, in the monarchists' case, they're
Hereditary.
The minarchists are essentially arguing, well, it's possible to make 2 + 2 = 5. We just got to do it right.
Well,
We
no,
just
no,
got-
no. You can only do that if it's if the Australian Parliament makes it law. If you don't know what I'm referencing, I believe, no, I don't know the date, but the Australian Prime Minister said that, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the laws of Australia trump the laws of mathematics. I wish I were making that up, but no, he said that, and as a result, I can pretty much say that the complete and total dissolution of and removal of Australia from Euclidean space will begin imminently.
Oh, it's happened. It's happened in the U.S. as well. Have you heard of the Indiana Pie Bill?
No, I haven't.
In 1897, the Indiana General Assembly tried to establish that pi, the equation for pi, equaled something other than what it does. They tried to argue that it doesn't go on as a mathematical constant, that it equals 3.2. I'd have to read it again exactly what it said, but yeah, it essentially was factually inaccurate, but they were trying to make it illegal to say otherwise.
I mean, you can say whatever you want. You can say pie means blueberry, but
Yeah.
I mean, why would you need to ban that? I have so many questions. Why? That's just the only one I really care about, though. Why?
Yeah, but this kind of proves the point in government. They sit there and say, okay, let's worry about pie instead of worrying about actually making society better for people.
I'm actually
Like,
I actually prefer if they
No.
worry about things like figuring out what the equation for pi is, rather
That
than trying
is
to make
true.
society, rather than trying to figure out ways to make society better. Because if they genuinely cared about making society better, they would all quit. They would all make having a government job illegal and then walk out the door that very minute the law passed. But since they're not doing that, I can only assume that they're full of it. So therefore, yeah.
Well,
Let's
as
be honest
you're-
here.
I
Let's
mean,
think of all
we
the.
find the incentive of politicians and the nature of government that even if you were to get somebody like Ron Paul into office, nothing would have changed.
No, I mean,
Yeah, what we're about to read is proof of that from their own words.
yeah, and I'm reminded.
Don't go too far yet. We don't need a filthy heretic to suddenly die again. We still got the Portland public school thing if we're still doing that.
Oh, right, yeah. So, just one last thing. I'm reminded of something that Glenn Beck actually said, of all people, when he was,
Wow.
I know, but hear me out. He was talking to George W. Bush on in his last days in office, and Glenn Beck, as you know, pseudo-conservative, generally basically a Republican shill. He was very concerned about what Obama would do in '08 or '09 when he came into office, and George Bush just laughed at his concerns and just said, like, look, whatever happens, they're gonna be receiving the same signals, the same information. They're gonna be told the same financial truths. They're gonna be existing in basically the same system. They're gonna do the same exact freaking thing as I did. Now, granted, there might be a few changes here and there, but largely the effects are just going to be completely identical, and it doesn't matter who you vote for. I guess that means you just weren't voting hard enough. Yeah.
I actually heard someone tell me today that Trump is the closest thing to anarchy we will have.
Okay.
That's you see the expression on my avatar? That's me right now.
Oh my god.
And for the time being, the F stands for something else. But anyways, now let's talk about the Portland thing.
Teaching guide for Portland public schools celebrates Islam, communists, terrorists, abortion, promotes gun control, and transgenders.
Really quick, after the stream, can you send me a screenshot of that comment?
Yeah.
The
Send me
Trump
one
thing?
too.
That was in voice chat.
Damn it.
Oh.
I mean,
If I knew it would say something autistic, I would have put up OBS.
usually there's certain times where you just know you're gonna hear something autistic. Voltaire. Excuse me. Anyways,
Voltaire. I remember one of the last conversations I had with Voltaire. He tried to tell me that egoism is a rationalist philosophy.
I'm not sure where he gets that from, or if he even knows what rationalist means.
So to this whole school thing,
Yes.
yeah, like what happened to like learning math and like things that actually should be used to like survive, like how to like buy shit and like do a job and like maybe even hunt, fish, and cook. Like they say schools to prepare us for the world, but no, they're teaching us all these retarded things and saying this is what you need to know. And then you got kids who are 25 still living at home because they can't even cook a meal for themselves. School is the biggest waste of money I can think of.
Well,
Biggest waste.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's working just as planned.
Well, yeah, Rockefeller said, I want a nation of workers, not thinkers. So let's just boggle your mind with stupid shit so you can't think intelligently or use logic or anything else.
Was Rockefeller involved in getting the Prussian model implemented in the United States?
Yes,
He was?
he was. And he was
No.
one of the biggest supporters for public education for all people. And
No, he was a
really-
big supporter. No. He was a big supporter of it, but the Prussian model came before Rockefeller was even born, I think.
But no, he really wanted people to be workers, not thinkers. He did say that. There's an actual quote he said.
Yeah, I know. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but
did
he wasn't key in implementing the Prussian model.
I'm trying to think. Like I know I did a video about this over a year ago, which is why I'm blanking on the dates. But if I recall correctly, it became national around 1910-ish, and was starting to become widespread around like 1890, at least in the United States. So
Okay, I'll have to look that up, but I'm pretty sure that it was in federal law by the
you
1830s.
can read some of the comments and quotes by a lot of the proposal's key supporters, and even its inventor has just some absolutely horrific, terrifying quotes. his Johann Gottlieb Fichte, the guy who invented the damn thing, said that he didn't want kids to think otherwise as their schoolmasters would have wished.
Yep.
Which, I mean, given the high proportion of statists there are in society, is quite a lot. Which, of course, makes sense, because why would the government train people to think for themselves? They might come to the conclusion that they don't need government.
Yep.
That's weird. And back to the schooling specifically example, I understand that nowadays schooling has gotten so backwards that they don't even mark kids incorrect on a test if they get the wrong answer on a math problem. It's just like, if they showed their work and did the correct procedure, then they get to keep their points.
But yeah, now they're just going into full ideological indoctrination from the looks of it.
Yeah.
Here's a good
I've been saying this for years.
Yeah, I remember even back when I was a kid, I think about some of the things that I was taught. Like, I remember back in like 2008.
I remember back in elementary school, I got a sheet asking, why did I vote for Obama? Like, I'm not making that up. That legitimately was a thing.
Were you even old enough to vote?
No, I was in elementary school.
Well, I remember like being taught that money came into existence because trade was inefficient, and then governments came along to make it efficient.
My personal stories mostly boiled down to myths surrounding the Great Depression. My personal favorites,
ignoring the fact that you can prove historically, like, trading sticks existed tens of thousands of years before governments came along.
Oh, that's even.
Here's the quote. Were you on the Prussian model before we change subject? Here we go.
We're not changing subjects anytime soon.
All right.
Continue.
If you want to influence the student at all, you must do more than merely talk to him. You must fashion him, and fashion him in such a way that he simply cannot will otherwise than what you wish him to will.
That sounds like something Mr. Fichte would say. Who said it?
It's a Horace Mann quote.
That was said by Jonah Gilbert Fichte. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, nice! I called it.
They're basically the same, but
yeah, kind
Horace
of.
Mann, American.
So let's see here. My own personal stories in regards to stupid myths is like Great Depression. Herbert Hoover, who was president when the Great Depression started, you might have heard of him, implemented a policy called voluntarism, where he would just yes, exactly. He would yeah, I'm not kidding. That was literally a vocabulary term on my textbook. I remember that specifically. And his strategy was he would have a very hands-off approach to the economy and just hoped that it would fix it. While also saying in the same book, by the way, but what he did was he would shut down banks, put money in the banks, and then have them opened again. But this didn't work. So you know what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did? He shut down the banks. He shut down the banks, put money in them, and then reopened them, and somehow doing the exact same thing worked. Weird.
Yep.
Oh, I can't get over that. That's what they honestly thought voluntarism was. What was essentially like Keynesianism before Keynes was even finished with his theory.
Yep.
Yeah, that is.
Like this thing that I'm looking at is just
I haven't seen anything
disgusting.
that, dude. I haven't seen anything that crazy, but yeah, I'm sure that they are teaching people like that.
Oh, it gets even worse too. I mean, I think I remember someone in either a Discord or a chat or somewhere saying that the majority of kids who are struggling or even failing school aren't doing so because they're dumb, but because they're just uninspired, they're defeated, and they just don't care, so they don't put any effort into their work whatsoever. Mostly because they're smart as hell, and they can't get anywhere with teachers who are trying to endlessly beat them down. No, you have to do it this way. No, you have to do it this way. And I actually have a personal story about that. I'm pretty sure I told you guys, but
The funny thing about that is that the ones that actually are failing, more times than not in the current system, I'd be willing to bet are the smarter ones.
yeah,
Because the ones with lower IQs and the ones that don't think much about what they're taught would just take everything that the teacher's saying and mindlessly repeat it so that they get test answers right.
Yeah, I mean, I had a personal
Here's one for you.
experience
They
with,
said I was stupid.
Mhm.
They said I was stupid. I wouldn't go anywhere because I got like a 1.8 in school GPA, but that's because like I couldn't follow the directions right. But here I am making money every day, buying options and stocks, and I'm probably doing better than half the people who got A's in my class economically.
Yep.
Now,
But I don't know math.
good, you don't know math. Even though half the crap that they teach you in math, you'll probably never use in real life.
Fucking algebras.
I mean, this is the whole point of the system is just to beat people down and just like drive all the smart people to just like give up, like just stop caring. And it's something I had a personal experience with. Like it was freshman year of high school. This was before Common Core, by the way, so that's not really a factor. But what was going on is that we were in pre-algebra freshman year of high school, and there was a certain set of fractional problems. I forget the specific details, but the teacher taught us the way to solve these equations, and I was just like, what? It made absolutely no sense whatsoever. Like, it was absolutely complete gibberish.
I remember having to bust my ass finding a Khan Academy tutorial to fill in the blanks and actually teach me what was set and skull.
Oh, yeah.
Now here's fucking dead without that. Oh my god.
Now to finish my story, basically the teacher would do some example problems, and I'd realize, like, wait a minute, the answer she is giving actually makes some sense. So I worked backwards from there, and I figured out a solution to the problems that is completely different than what the teacher is taking. Hey, this is really cool. I figured out my own method of solving these problems. Nope, no. Bad, heretic. Very, very bad. You have to do it this way. And that was just drilled into me over several days. And at some point, like, I was trying to tell the class, like, look, this is a way better way. It's a lot faster. It's a lot more efficient. You can solve these problems using fractions in your head without any difficulty whatsoever. And it worked. You would get the problems right all the time. But no, you have to do it this way. If you aren't showing your work the way, and not just showing your work, but showing your work the way I want you to, then you're going to get points off the test. So at that point, I just gave up, and I was like, you know what? I understand half of what you're trying to do, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into the test, I'm going to solve them my way, and then I'm going to go back in there and then just like try to solve it your way just so I can have notes on the margins to make it look like I'm doing it your way.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing is like really going to beat all sorts of students down to make them stop caring about their schoolwork.
No, I actually very distinctly remember the last few years of high school. My grades in math just slumped because of the fact that they'd started implementing more Common Core measures, and they were presented to me, and they just made absolutely no sense. I was just doing math the way that it's supposed to be done, the way I'd been taught before, and then I'm presented with this new system that makes even less sense than the old ones, less efficient, and I just freaking didn't do it.
You know what's the funny thing? The average person only needs to make a decent middle-class income, a 4th grade education. You only need that much information worth of math, science, and English to make it. And yet they have us doing this advanced shit like fractions and variables that you're never going to use in real life unless you're an engineer or something.
In which case,
I'd say it's not as much fractions and variables as it is the crazier shit they teach you in the high school. My goodness me.
The best
Just
thing I learned.
nightmares after this day.
The most useful thing I learned in high school was during lunch how to play Magic the Gathering. That was the most useful thing I learned in high school.
I believe you.
Yeah, I mean, I just really didn't learn much in school. It's not that I'm stupid, because later on, just these last 2 years, I've basically learned everything that was attempted to get taught, that they attempted to teach me in school, and I've learned them far more efficiently, far better, and I've learned far more about them than I ever could have in school.
Yep.
And to see that they're literally trying to indoctrinate kids with communism, and they dedicated an entire month of the school year in this curriculum we're talking about, in this textbook they're handing out in school, to gun control. April is apparently gun control month.
Yep.
What?
It
You're
is
kidding
very.
me.
I'm not.
Yeah. It wouldn't be on here if we weren't kidding.
Yeah, you can look at the link in our Discord page for yourself. It's very.
Like-
I'm picking up a scratching noise.
Teach gun control. Teach communism. Communist Manifesto says not to give up your guns. Where's this logic coming from? Wait,
It's coming from the people who benefit from communism.
It's coming from the statists, basically the authoritarian communists who generally don't want people to be armed because otherwise they lose their power.
yeah, that's why they
Yep.
killed the anarchist really quickly, because they knew these people will kill us once we become authoritarian.
Yeah,
Get against the wall.
just ignore the fact that Marx was an employee of the Rothschild bankers, and the Rothschilds funded the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. Just ignore all that.
Look away, look away, look away.
Anyways, I think this is a good segue.
Dixie
Let's get to the last unspecified
The
topic.
good stuff.
Hello?
So who wants to announce it?
Yeah, well,
I think we're probably gonna have to draw straws in terms of who gets to announce it because once we start speaking the unspecified thing, the stream's gonna die again.
Oh, I
Okay.
have an idea.
if it happens
Wrong.
again, then we know it's not a coincidence.
Okay, so
right.
SO, how about you? How about you lead us off?
Okay, so this is a untitled, redacted report posted by the FBI, which was sent to Senator Edward Kennedy on July 7th, 1989, and it got leaked by Five Star Trust, and you can see on the very front page this was not intended to be released because it was classified top secret.
I can read it when you want me to.
Sure, go ahead, because
All right.
Wait, hold on a second. Can someone post the link to the thing in the chat?
Hey, Riley, yeah, that's on you.
Okay, send it to me.
I'll send it to Filthy.
I can't send it to you because I've got to be focused on the live stream.
I'll
Stop
send
talking
it to
to
Riley.
Opera.
I'll send it to you.
Here it comes. There you are. But,
There we go.
all right.
Now,
Filthy, I'd recommend you put this on your screen for the extra effect I told you about.
one sec.
All right.
Yeah, I'm opening the thing.
All right, just tell me when you're ready.
Everybody gets to see what my fuck. That's actually really bad. Okay,
Uh-oh.
that's not a big deal. Let me just copy the link. I'll open it on a different.
Technical problems. Oh shit, they're coming for us again.
No, everything's fine.
All right.
Why do I care about this? Go away. Okay, here we go. Yeah, this is
Ready?
This is top secret information. So, it's good. Yep, we're good.
All right. Dear Senator, per your oral request of 5 June 1989, requesting a full report on the Japanese, Singapore, New Zealand, Kentucky connection, that what follows is a complete and thorough investigation of any and all available files of the Bureau, as well as any top secret, confidential, or personal files from the Department of Defense, the Central Intelligence Agency, the Departments of the Navy, Army, and Marine Corps, as well as the quote-unquote borrowed microfilm report records of World War II, or of the World War II Office of Strategic Services, OSS. If this top secret report were to be quote-unquote leaked in any portion, Senator, you understand that our agents planted in the above agencies would be exposed, and over 15 years of work would be in total disarray.
Exposed.
Due to the nature of the one common link in the total operation, which will be outlined, we have interpreted your request to include as full and in-depth investigation into the present assignment of Major General Robert L. Ferrara, as well as into his total work from the 2nd of February, 1942 to present. That investigation is as complete as possible, given the total silence we have encountered whenever we have as much mentioned his name. During the tenure of Richard Helms as director of the Central Intelligence Agency, decisions were made by the director with implied approval of the Oval Office to draft a blueprint and put into motion a plan by which the CIA could have as much funds as and when needed without knowledge of Congress. This would accomplish the dual purpose of carrying out the clandestine and covert operations without the quote-unquote clearance of the Congress, as well as avoid the necessity of having to request any extra funds and thus divulging the workings of any covert operations in progress or planned. Director Helms wrote a memo to the Oval Office we interpreted, in which he stated, in part, if Congress or any other uninformed quote-unquote do-gooders ever become aware of this operation, this agency and its director will invoke the 1949 Central Intelligence Agency Act, which
hold on a second.
CIA
want to say something.
All laws requiring disclosure of quote-unquote functions, names, official titles, salaries, and numbers of personnel employed by the agency. Using this as the cloak of legality, Director Helms put together a team of 5 top people.
There we go.
First bit.
Oh, yes, I saw you were saying something.
Should we do commentaries? Should we put our commentary in between reading the stuff?
Yeah, let's stop reading at the end of the paragraphs per page.
Sure.
Yeah, so basically we got from that last paragraph that the Oval Office can do things which supposedly he shouldn't be able to with checks and balances with implied approval, which essentially that's pretty terrifying because that sort of implies that all government authority comes from the executive branch.
More importantly, it means that the any pretense that any status might have for democracy is pretty much gone, since the CIA is clearly giving itself exemption from the normal budgetary process.
And don't forget that what we mentioned earlier, that considering that all politicians have the incentive to not serve people, but to basically fuck everybody over for their own
benefit.
Yeah. Don't ever expect things to change in the current system.
No. Nope. Well, you just gotta vote harder, you see. Alright, so anyways, continue.
Of course. The five experts picked were General Edward Lansdale, who ran the CIA activities in Vietnam, William Colby, who was to be put in total command of the blueprint operation when enacted, George Bush, who asked and received approval to have his top aide, Richard Armitage, to be brought aboard, and Lieutenant Colonel Robert Ferrara, a top CIA asset who at the time was on an assignment in the Congo on the Patrice Lumumba stage situation. Having secured the quote-unquote implied go-ahead, the 5 experts were called in and the task put forth to them. They were given a space of 3 days to solve the problem and come up with a viable solution. 5 men met in Washington, D.C., and from there traveled to Langley, Virginia. 4 of the 5 handpicked were for their very special abilities and their expertise. The 5th member of the group, Armitage, was brought along by George Bush as his personal quote-unquote gopher. Bush was chosen for his knowledge of China and his wartime flying ability, as well as his being quote-unquote on the way up within the CIA. General Lansdale was brought in because of his expertise as a top CIA asset, especially in breaking insurgencies, as he did with the Huks in the Philippines in the late 50s. William Colby was picked for his knowledge of the Southeast Asia and to command the operations first phase. Lieutenant Colonel Ferrara was included because of his varied experience as a pilot, as well as his command over a dozen languages and position as a founder of the Special Forces Green Berets, and still, at the time, regarded as their unofficial commander in Vietnam. The 5 names were submitted to the quote-unquote godfather of the CIA, John Foster Dulles, who gave the plan his total blessing. The group met the deadline and came up with a plan that would be so enlarged in scope that, if carried out to the most minute detail, we would become simple by its mere complexity. The plan presented called for a second airline to be set up by the CIA. The first was Flying Tigers. This was done, and the airline was named quote-unquote Overseas National Airline.
Yeah,
this
we'd
airline suddenly, without having any aircraft, received the contracts for all civilian carrier and military cargo into the Pacific Rim and Southeast Asia. The master plan called for the CIA to enter into the drug smuggling business in a total and complete fashion. Each of the 5 planners would have his own field to handle. Bush would be the secret head of ONA, and handle all the shipping of drugs and under forged waybills. Armitage would be the quote-unquote gopher for the group and the intermediary with any quote-unquote undesirables. General Lansdale would handle all the distribution network and collection services within the military in Vietnam. William Colby was to handle the setting up of all the manpower from runners, peddlers, pushers, and collectors, and so forth, as well as the elimination of any who might prove to be uncontrollable, be they American or Vietnamese. Lieutenant Colonel Ferrara was able to use his contacts in Latin America and in the Middle East to obtain from various governments the needed drugs: heroin, cocaine, marijuana, LSD, etc., as ordered by Colby. Bush was to handle the opium from China. The operation was given the name of Eagle 2 at the request of Ferrara, for he felt it would be lucky to have the same code as Eagle project he had participated in when he was with the OSS.
Yeah, so there are a lot of names being dropped here that we should probably look up after the stream. Because
one doesn't
guys,
need
I'm gonna have to
looking up.
jump out early. I'm gonna have to go early. I got a call. I need to take care of an emergency situation, but everything's gonna be all right. I just have to take care of something.
All
So I'll
right,
see you
go
next
ahead.
time.
like
Yeah.
John Foster Dulles, for example. We should look up that guy, see what he's been involved in.
I'm pretty sure George Bush needs no looking up. You might recognize that name as the George
talking about-
H.W. Bush.
Yeah, this is 1989, so they're talking about Bush Sr. here.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
I mean, I'm almost certain that the reason that this document exists is because Ted Kennedy was doing some digging. He found reference to the let me look up what the name of the documents real quick. The Japanese, Singapore, New Zealand, Kentucky connection, and was getting his contacts in the FBI to help figure out what's going on. And as it turns out, the guy was involved in drug trafficking and assassinations.
Yep.
Like, if this isn't a bombshell, then I don't think that there can be any such thing as a bombshell.
You need to make this video the video when the stream is uploaded just not unlisted.
Yeah, that's the insane thing. Bush Sr. was involved in assassinations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, there's the implied almighty authority from the executive office, at least
quote unquote implied.
Quote unquote implied, meaning essentially that all government authority comes from the executive branch.
Yeah, I love when all authority comes from the executive branch. It's all
well. That one line for me is the bombshell, because I mean that's them in their own words admitting that
they're dictators.
All government is autocracy.
Mm-hmm.
These checks and balances are just controlled opposition.
And for all of you minarchists who are thinking that we just need to change the United States Constitution and everything will be hunky-dory, Lysander Spooner said it best, that the Constitution either authorizes the government that we have or is powerless to prevent it. Either way, it is not fit for purpose.
And with that, we will continue. Or do you have anything more to say?
Well, that was the best logical refutation of the idea of a constitution and a government. But I think that this, on a pragmatic level, I love that word for the pragmatists. Yeah, even you can't claim that government has a necessary reason to exist anymore after reading this, because everything you say it doesn't, and the people running it know full goddamn well that it doesn't.
All right, well, I've still got a little water left. Let's continue before I run out, and I have to get some more.
Okay.
Before the operation was really off the ground, Colby started his phase of elimination of dissidents, and he did so under the code of quote-unquote the Phoenix program. Colby became insane with his power, and before he was finished with Phoenix, over 20,000 quote-unquote suspects were executed, and over 2,500 United States citizens were accused by Colby of being quote-unquote collaborators, and they vanished. Helms attempted over and over again to have Colby eliminated, but found that it could not be done, for copies of all plans, as well as secret recordings of all spoken at all of the meetings, were kept in safekeeping someplace as an insurance policy for Colby against Helms and Dulles. The fault for this fell on Armitage, for he was in charge of the security for the meetings, etc. Helms found that he had to make an arrangement with Colby, calling for Colby to resign from the group forever and forever retain his quote-unquote secrets. In exchange for the resignation of Colby, Helms, with the approval of Dulles, promised Colby that he would, in the future, become the director of the CIA. This promise was kept by Helms. Colby withdrew. More problems were to be encountered in the later years with George Bush and his aide, Richard Armitage. Bush, for his cooperation in silence, was groomed for his president position, as well as becoming the director of the CIA. He was named CIA director so as to increase the operation tenfold. The only persons who did their job and asked for nothing in return were the two military CIA officers, General Lansdale and Lieutenant Colonel Ferrara.
Yeah, so
the plan was in full force when the United States government.
Hold on. Dude, Hoplu, you kind of just ignored a really big piece of information there, that Bush Sr. was only elected because the CIA stole the election for him.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that when I finished reading.
Yeah, so what is this?
Literally, you're just saying it right here, out in the open, that he was elected.
Bush, for his cooperation in silence, was groomed for his president position, as well as becoming director of the CIA.
Well, present position, but 1989, that would have been President of the United States. So,
Yeah.
You can read that as a president position, even though it says present. But what's absolutely hilarious is that you have the implied overwhelming power that the executive branch has, as well as to select its own head. Like, they handpicked Bush to become director of the CIA, and they probably only did that because he asked for it when he was named part of the 5-man operation called Eagle 2. So
Yeah,
what do you have to say? What do you have to say about that, statists? How does that democracy taste?
yeah, all the people in power right now are literally just choosing themselves. They're all insiders, and they chose themselves to be there.
Also,
And
I'm
then,
gonna read this. What I'm gonna do for the rest of the stream is I'm gonna read the stuff. Then I'm gonna shut up and let you two commentate on it, so I can save my breath for the reading.
You keep talking over us as well, which is kind of annoying. But
Sorry.
And then they mentioned the Phoenix program. Somebody look up the Phoenix program, because that something tells me that there's going to be a sort of interesting connection between what's exposed here about it and what's actually known publicly, if anything is known publicly about it.
So what's also interesting is that George Bush, then president at the time, and overall son of a bitch, is connected with an operation that resulted in what can only be described as mass murder. He is associated with mass murderers.
Yeah, 27,000 people in total died? Well, no, it was 20,000 suspects were executed and 2,500 U.S. citizens went missing, but you basically can deduce from that they were assassinated.
Yes, and let me remind the audience why they were assassinated. Because the CIA wanted a drug smuggling operation to fund the CIA without the need for congressional approval.
When you kill thousands of people to protect the funding for your drug dealing operation, someone make a meme of that, and then it's a Picardia ball with the CIA logo.
Well, I mean, if you ever want people to shut up, I guess these are the people you go to.
No. When you murder 2,500 U.S. citizens so that you can get 6-year-olds addicted to acid.
That sounds about right. So anyways, should we continue?
Yeah.
All right, go.
The plan was in full force when the United States government encountered continued opposition to its request from the Japanese government ruling party to put the CIA-controlled people in power. Bush personally picked an obscure party formed in 1955, bankrupt and with very little membership, to back in the possible takeover of government. But the Liberal Democratic Party needed vast amounts of funds to carry out their part. They had to, quote-unquote, buy the membership and the votes. It was decided to give this obscure party all of the funds needed, and before they finally achieved power, a sum of over 300 billion Japanese yen had been funneled to them. This was carried out by Lieutenant Colonel Ferrara, for he had a very special relationship with first cousin of Emperor Hirohito, Prince Hirohito Watamane, and thus the colonel had a quote unquote open door to Japanese politicians and to the Diet.
So in other words, basically the entire Japanese system as it is structured today, because the Liberal Democratic Party is one of the biggest parties in Japan right now. That is because of the American CIA.
Yep.
Pretty much.
Fucking CIA ruining him. That, in effect, Senator, is the start of the Operation Eagle 2, which over time has now evolved into what you refer to as the Japanese, Singapore, New Zealand, Kentucky connection. This connection came about in a rather strange manner, and were it not for unforeseen circumstances, there would not now be any such connection. There is a code name used in this regard, Senator, and that is Studebaker.
Studebaker?
Studebaker. They have, from time to time, changed the code, but it is still spoken of as Studebaker by those in charge. As this report proceeds, Senator, you will see where all of the players fit into the puzzle, except in reference to do anything pertaining to Lieutenant Colonel Ferrara, now Major General. It is impossible for it to even get the agency, or the Pentagon, or the Army, or the Navy, Marine Corps, or the Department of Defense to so much as admit to any such person possibly existing. We might add at this time that it is our supposition and strong suspicion that General Ferrara is now the top worldwide CIA quote-unquote free agent, in charge of all clandestine operations and, if needed, assassinations. We have it on totally reliable authority that Ferrara is responsible only to the real director and secret of the CIA, Mr. Helms. We have taped conversations between Ferrara and the powerful Baron Philippe de Daphne, as well as with Helms. It is impossible for us to divulge our methods in the securing of these conversations, Senator. General Ferrara is so deeply buried in secrecy that even those within the upper levels of the CIA confess to ever hearing of him. With our knowledge of the dozens of aliases used by the General, and with our total access to the computer information of the agency, we have not been able to crack open the one code word that would give us knowledge we seek. Our most trusted agents within all agencies cannot unearth an iota of information on the General's true job, purpose, etc., or his present mission. All we have been able to gather of his present work is that he is giving a helping hand to a wonderful malignant individual, one Marion Horn. This is an... Shit. What you said. This is an excerpt taken from a quote-unquote top-secret report by General Ferrara to then-President Ronald Reagan. This report was a quote-unquote... Shit. This report was given by Ferrara to the president in explaining why he, Ferrara, was turning down another star. If he accepted, he would receive another assignment, and Ferrara did not want to desert Horn. This relationship that we feel is like that of a quote-unquote father-son has cost the General dearly, for the General is now on the very brink of total ruin financially. His military pay and his agency pay have been stopped as a result of Ferrara withdrawing from any and all assignments with both the military and the agency until, quote-unquote, my friend J.R. collects all that is due him.
Okay, so it sounds like what they're describing is that this Ferrara guy has been sheep-dipped, which is something that the military does, where when you apply to be a Green Beret or whatever, what they will officially scrub you from all their records. They'll keep you in a classified document, in sort of a classified archive, and you'll still be doing stuff for them off the record. That's something that they've been doing for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we can actually do much more, since we should probably wrap up the stream.
All right.
That's 5 pages in, and we've got tens of thousands of people assassinated by the government. We've got the government, the U.S. government, essentially
the executive branch is essentially a dictator.
The Japanese political system. The executive branch of the United States is implicitly responsible for everything that the government does, and every branch of the government is implicitly directly adhering to the executive branch, which means that our government is effectively structured as a autocratic dictatorship.
Yeah. All because the CIA wants some monies.
All because no, it's not that they wanted money, it's that they tried to funnel it off the record so that they could get 6-year-olds addicted to cocaine.
At some point, you have to question their objectives.
That is 5 pages out of a 24-page document. Can you make sure to link this whole document in the description of the stream so that people can read it for themselves?
Of course.
And yeah, I'm probably going to make a video about the separation of powers after this, because, I mean, this document essentially proves that it's just controlled opposition, and I want to basically explain why that is.
Well, anyone can tell that it's controlled opposition just by observing how the political parties work.
Yeah, no one ever consented to the government being structured in the way that it advertises itself to work, so they aren't technically defrauding anyone.
Well, actually, people did sign their name to it. There's the signatories of the. Did people sign the United States Constitution?
I
actually don't remember.
Signed the Constitution, though.
If there's anyone who signed the Constitution, well, they can be considered to have consented. But there's one problem: everybody who would have signed the Constitution is dead.
Yep.
And plus, the people who consented to the Constitution eventually went on to become heads of state. Not presidents, but they in the first U.S. Congress and the government, they ended up giving themselves power. So that's just another example of, they essentially used the government to give themselves authority over other people.
Yeah, it's basically just one gigantic circle jerk of people giving themselves and each other power.
I mean, this is a lot to take in right now, and I've sort of been having a hard time thinking because I've been making my video all day, and I'm fucking
mentally exhausted.
Not mentally exhausted, it's just hot out, but yeah, mental exhaustion is a thing that happens.
All right. Well, I think we can wrap up the stream here. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for putting up with the little technical difficulties we had earlier. So,
yeah.
We'll be back next Tuesday. See ya.
Possibly to start reading or to continue reading. Who knows? We'll see.
We'll discuss that later. We'll discuss that after the stream. Okay, bye.
Yeah.